Alrighty, I grew up playing chess. I'm no chess grandmaster or anything. In fact, my 10-year-old whooped me the other day. I didn't realize he'd learned how to play as well as he had, and I was half paying attention and beat me fair and square. So I bought this super cheap chess set. It's like 20 bucks. It's well made. As far as I can tell, it's solid wood. It might be thinner laminate, but that's fine. But the idea here is to channel my inner Salvador Dali. You know, the guy that does the paintings of dripping clocks and random bizarre stuff. I kind of dig that. So my idea was to create a kind of a broad funnel shaped item, and it will be a vase. And the idea here is to create the birth of chess. We're going to call it Chess Origins. Go along with all the superhero themes lately in the movies. So my thought is to have the board. I'm going to cut this up, sacrifice this guy. I was lucky enough to be able to buy a new bandsaw. I shouldn't say new, my first ever bandsaw. It's from Laguna. It's a sweet looking machine. And so I'm going to destroy this thing, and we're going to put it into a vase, into the windows that I like to create. And I want it to look like it's kind of coming out of the earth or something. Like it's being created. I am not known for my sketching skills, that's for sure. Anyway, so at first it'll be, you know, solid chessboard down low, and then as it comes up, the chess pieces will be looser and looser. If that makes sense. Anyway, that's my idea. So, Chess Origins. Let's see what happens. My two boys have totally been into chess lately. They've been on the chess club and all that, and usually, up until recently, I've been able to just smoke them without even trying. You know how it is. You just move pieces around and destroy them one by one as they make mistakes. Well, hadn't played them in a long time, and one day we pulled out the board, and my 10-year-old absolutely killed me in like 10 minutes. He caught me off guard with all that he knew. And unfortunate for my next oldest, he said, "Ooh, I want to play since we can beat Dad." And by then I was mad, so I killed him. But now they're good. You got to stay on your game. So this is a new toy I was able to get recently. This is the Laguna Lathe, 14-inch. Took me a while to figure it out and get it set up. I'm sorry, not lathe. Did I say lathe? I meant bandsaw. I have never owned a bandsaw, so this was awesome. I'd had my eye on this project for a long time, and I knew I was going to need more tools than I have, so awesome equipment. Laguna knows how to make it right. I have a lathe and a bandsaw now, and they're just fantastic. This was a chunk of willow wood, native to Utah, the United States. It's not super soft, but it is softer than like apple wood or some of those others. Harder than pine. Super easy to turn, but not so soft that you can't finish it to a perfect smoothness. So I really liked it. I also have to work my way past the chainsaw marks that the tree company left when they cut it down, but that's kind of part of the challenge, right? I like to keep the moisture as low as I possibly can, and this piece had been drying all summer out in my wood pile. And here in Utah we got super low humidity and things dry out real easy, so that's one bonus to living in the desert. For these big long pieces, I wouldn't dare do anything but a tenon. You're clamping down around the wood as opposed to expanding from inside. So you're asking the wood to stay together as opposed to it withstanding the forces of expansion. And I just find this as safe as you can be. Of course, I always use my tailstock to support it while I'm turning and hollowing, but I have yet to have it fail me, unless I did something really dumb like try to glue one on. I don't know how people make that work. That tends to fail. Alright, I got this the basic shape I wanted. Kind of liking this shape lately, you may have noticed, is to have this look like the birth of chess. As if it sprung out of the ground, you know. I want the pieces of the board and the chess pieces to kind of look like they're emerging from the wood, and then assembling and then filling in places so that we'll have a strip of the chessboard upside down being formed. So we're going to leave this edge, and then whenever I'm doing windows, I like to take out the rotten, cruddy pieces of wood that are not worth saving. That's one nice thing about having a huge wood pile of rotten wood, that I didn't know I was going to become a wood turner, and so I got all this wood that's already dry, already cracked, and just making the most of it, trying to recycle it the best I can. That's kind of worked out. So I'm envisioning, you know how half the board's light colored, the other half is dark colored. I'm going to do the formation of the board, each color, each on each half. Alright, here's one little trick I learned from surgery, which I'm sure some surgeon ripped off from a good carpenter. Here's the size of one piece of my chessboard. And I don't want to drill much deeper than that because it's going to sit in there. I need to give myself like a 1/4 inch plus of variability when I turn, otherwise I'll eat into it. So I'm going to go, I want to cut out my holes, my windows. I'm going to be a little generous. I'm going to give myself that much room. So I'm going to go around and drill a bunch of holes, and that'll kind of give me a depth. One of my problems I've been with, or I've had before, is I'm not consistent in the depth of my window. So one will be deep, one will be shallow. So I end up cutting out a lot of the item in the deeper window and trying to get rid of the wall, the back side of the wall for the shallow one. So trying to be more consistent, that is the goal. So this is just going to be my pilot hole. Now I know I only drill to that mark. So the idea here, of course, was when I start to hollow this out with this angle grinder cutting disc, as I'd watch those holes, and as soon as I reached the bottom of it, I knew I was at the right depth. So it's not perfect, but gets you pretty close. These big wide windows, it's hard to tell when you're at the right depth, and if you're at the right contour in there, you can do a pretty good eyeball. But when you're talking about a 1/4 inch here or there making a big difference in terms of when you're turning the wood piece and losing the subject in there or cutting into it, it is a big deal. And if you look close at this piece, you'll notice I did get pretty deep into a couple of the pieces, so I wasn't very good at this, but it's my first attempt at it, and it certainly helped. So next time around, maybe I'll drill a little slower and make sure I'm exact in my depth, but you know, I'm slowly perfecting this technique. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I've had some success and some failures with the resin. And I think I announced on my last video that I had solved the resin problem. Oh, sweet mercy, that was wrong. Actually, I have the perfect system now, but I made a crucial mistake, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm going to see if you can figure it out. Anyway, if you're trying to come up with clear resin, there's 3 or 4 really critical things that you have to do, otherwise you're going to get bubbles, cracks, foaming, foggy, whatever. And most important thing is the wood has to be dry. Usually most people say that the moisture content of the wood should be below 10%. I think I agree with that. At least below 10. I'm usually landing somewhere in the 2 to 3%, and that doesn't seem to cause any problems with the resin. So really low moisture content of the wood's number 1. Number 2, the type of resin has to be deep resin pouring rated. So you have to look at the manufacturer's guidelines, and they'll tell you 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, how deep they think you can pour it. The deeper it is, the more you have an exothermic reaction, and it's not a simple linear relationship to how much you pour it and how hot it gets. I think it's pretty exponential. You go too deep and it gets really hot really fast. So you got to stick with the depth they recommend. Now you can cheat that by cooling off the temperature, which is the next most important thing, and you've got to stick with the manufacturer guidelines for the temperature they recommend. If you're pouring deeper than they recommend, then you got to go colder. So I solved my hot summertime garage issue by getting a little chest freezer. My pressure pot fit perfectly in there, so I could still get at the lid and put it on and off, which needs some room. But you're gonna laugh when you see this, but I got it to fit inside my freezer, and without ruining it, barely. So be careful if you're moving those coolant coils around in there. You pinch one, you're done. So anyway, temperature control is absolutely critical. Usually when it's too hot, you end up with cracking and bubbling. You can even get it to boil and totally ruin things. Then you've got two other bubble problems. The vacuum chamber is awesome. If you've got wood like mine that's got lots of fissures and holes in it, you need the vacuum chamber to draw, you draw down the pressure, and that allows the air to escape and rise to the surface, which when you drop it, the resin rushes into those holes, those chambers you've evacuated. So it really helps drive the resin into the holes so you don't have little streaming, trailing bubble pockets, which will come even with a pressure pot. So that's, I think the vacuum chamber is critical. If you're going for crystal clear resin, that's important. Then the final step, of course, is a pressure pot. And what it does differently than the vacuum chamber, it helps pressurize the tiny micro bubbles that are going to show up that get there when you're mixing. And when you're mixing a gallon or two of this stuff, you're going to get bubbles. It's hard to mix it appropriately without it. So the both are super important. One final lesson I've learned, if you're doing something like I'm doing, is leave some vents and pockets that are obvious and keep the top pretty loose. Otherwise, the air can't come out and the resin can't go in very well, which was a problem with this one. Everything I do is donated to Operation Underground Railroad. They help fight child trafficking around the world. So this piece will be auctioned. If you go to current auctions at art4our.com or .org, sorry, you'll find this for auction for about 10 days after this is listed, and we'll go from there. Alright, we're going to see if I'm gone too cold. I've got a sensor down to the base of this. 12 degrees Fahrenheit. On the surface of the compression or the pressure pot, it's 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And interestingly, I've noticed that when I do these big pours, really thick walls, and that the very base is always the really hottest. You can feel it on the outside. It's more insulated down there, and the heat just really gathers. So when I tried my air circulation attempt by just circulating air from my cool basement, I don't think enough cold air got to the bottom. So in this case, we're really chilling the bottom, and the top's not too bad, about where you'd want it, you know, 65 degrees or so for a really deep pour. So hopefully that gradient works in my favor. Oh, I put that in Wednesday night, so that's 24 hours. I'm sorry, 48 hours in the tank. So, and I've had it at a pressure of, oh, just under, let's say 45 degrees PSI. Let's see what we've got. I went ahead with rice. That was somebody's awesome suggestion. Made it so I could actually lift this thing. That was one thing that was keeping me from using the freezer again like I had done in the previous project, is I couldn't really lift it with sand, especially when it was a little moist. So all these parts are slowly coming together to a really good system. So 48 hours in, we'll see if it's set or not. Actually feels a little soft in there. So it doesn't look like we're going to be turning this tonight. I don't know if you can see that, but that's kind of, I'm not going to stick my finger in there, but we're kind of honey viscosity. It's at the right level. So I think we're going to be okay as far as the level of the resin, but no turning tonight. I put a fan in there just to circulate around the pot. It was a little too cold in the bottom and the resin wasn't setting, so it turned out to be a nice compromise because it kept it at a really nice temperature, 50s, 60s, which for big deep pours was perfect. My choice for resin, Total Boat thick set Fathom resin. You can do up to 3 or 4 inches or deeper if you're careful and you drop the temperature where you're letting it cure. I've gotten away with 3 or 4 inches as long as it's chilly where you're at. And so I recommend 60 degrees and below if you're doing that. But of course it's a linear relationship. Deeper you pour, the colder you better get it, and therefore the longer it'll take to set. But for my projects, I've got a 10-gallon vacuum chamber and a 10-gallon pressure pot, and they have served me well. So I had to take the top liner off this chest freezer because I couldn't quite get the pot deep enough in there. Where the motor sits, there's a shelf in there, and I wanted to sit on there so I could have some stability. And to get it down that low, I had to take the liner off and kind of bend out the coolant coils there, and it worked out fine. I was not intending on being able to shut it because I didn't want to freeze my resin. but I did want to get it cool enough. Anyway, I'll let the cat out of the bag before the music starts here, but after I got all excited about my lift-up freezer and I got the temperature control and everything else controlled, I forgot to put the pressure pot lid back on. Stupid mistake. I couldn't believe it when I saw what I had done. It was at kind of the thick honey stage when I discovered that. I'm sorry, when I took the lid off, and when I put it back on, it didn't matter. It had already hardened, so it was too late, but turned out pretty cool. So in the end with this project, I think I have to admit that my mistake of not putting the pressure pot lid back on because I was so excited about my temperature control may have resulted in a project that I like more than I would have had otherwise. I was trying to create the feeling of motion of the chess pieces moving and coming out of the wood and emerging, and with the appearance of the bubbles, it really enhanced that on one hand. So I was a pre-med major once, did a lot of biology classes, and of course we learned a lot about evolution and how life emerged initially from a primordial soup, as they called it. So that's what this reminded me of, especially with those bubbles, is if inanimate objects like chess pieces and a chessboard evolved, here it is emerging from its primordial soup. How about we bend your brain with that one? Anyway, thank you for your support. I love how this one ended up. We're going to auction it at Art for O.U.R. If you click on the menu under current auction, it'll be running for the next 10 days from the date of release of this video. There's certainly a whole lot of other things. We have about 100 artists who have donated things big and small. There's even food there, different things you can order. So all the money goes to Operation Underground Railroad, and your support is so awesome. So thank you very much. Have a great one.